Hi, my name is Deon Rebello, and this is the Bullion Vault. Hi, Willem, how you doing?
Good and you, Deon?
Very good. And we got quite an interesting episode. I mean, this is episode 12, and in our last episode, we were discussing the gold-silver ratio, and it did raise the question during the podcast that if we had to apply the changing in gold silver ratio over the periods of time, what would it actually mean? So, and we're going to unpack that a little bit more, but I just want to go into just general news quickly. I mean, we got gold sitting at over $3,000. I think it's about 3,020 odd dollars an ounce right now.
I think this morning it was 3027 round about there.
And for me, the important thing there is gold starting to show that it broke that resistance line of 3,000. And generally, when it happens, it's a short period of time it stays in, then there's a pullback, and then it kind of will stay under that resistant line for a period of time, and then slowly build up and push again. The interesting thing here is it's been more than a week, and it's stayed very strongly above the 3,000 mark.
Yeah, I mean we saw yet another all-time high of what was, I think it was around about 3060, 3065, round about there somewhere. And yes, as you mentioned, it comes back down and there's that pullback because it's hit the all-time high. There's some profit taking, people are selling, and that causes the price to come down a little bit as well. But as you mentioned, it's still sitting firmly above 3000 and it is definitely looking strong.
Again, you see with the US dollar, it has weakened against most currencies, including the rand. What's interesting also is the whole Trump's foreign policy, especially, internal policy with regards to trade tariffs to protect the US economy, internal economy, is still going at full speed, and he's still including new countries into it. And it's definitely, we spoke about this last week. There's a benefit to it because it will force the country to start to rely on its local resources and start to build those up. But there's going to be a pain period, and I think he's fully aware of that.
I think he's underestimating the pain period because, the industry needed to replace all of those companies to move manufacturing back into the US. It's infrastructure, it's manpower, it is knowledge and skills that just aren't there at the moment. And the cost of actually bringing all of those back into the US and building all of that up, you know, I think that he's completely underestimating it. I see the plan, I see the thought process, sort of. I mean, as much as you can see his thought processes, but yeah, it's. I think the dream is there, the idea is there, but I don't think he fully understands how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost to get all of that done, and how much it's actually going to damage the US economy until that happens. And I mean, we're talking possibly decades to get all of that up and running.
You raise a very valid point, and again, I think that is probably the most important part of this is idealistically, it's a good idea. And as I said to you, it makes sense. But there is a pain period. But to qualify and quantify a pain period, we're talking, as you say, a long period of time. You don't take an industry and it doesn't close down overnight. It took decades for the US to lose their automotive sector, for them to, have a downscaling in all the different sectors. It didn't just happen one day. It was a slow, slow kill where eventually, a couple of decades later, they're mostly importing a lot of their major commodities that they were producing locally.
Not just that, I mean, we often look at the US as this hub of technology. There's this powerhouse of innovation and technology. But go look at the technology. Yes, it's researched and developed in the US, but it's not manufactured there. I mean, not even the machines that manufacture the technology are manufactured there. If you look at, let's just take computer chips, for instance. Most of the computer chips is being manufactured in, I think it's Singapore.
Yeah.
And
Singapore and Taiwan.
Singapore, sorry, Taiwan. I was
Yeah.
thinking of Taiwan, not Singapore. Sorry. But yeah, most of the chips are being manufactured in Taiwan. And if we look at that, the machines that manufacture those chips are being made in the Netherlands, So it's the technology might be coming from the US, but none of it is actually really being manufactured there. And that is the biggest problem is not the fact that the chips aren't made there, the machines that make the chips aren't made there. And to suddenly try and instantly make it happen that everything is manufactured there, it's a fool's errand.
It's a valid point, and I think for me, it's not going to be a quick fix, but it does add a lot of pressure within the world economically. We still know that the US economy is under massive pressure. There is definite talk of a recession or an impending or imminent recession. That is still on the cards.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I think we saw the first quarter of decline. We're going to have to wait because I think a recession is 2 quarters of decline in succession. So we're going to have to wait and see. But yeah, it definitely looks like it is heading that way. Had this been done in a more staged, structured phase over a more sensible time period, then yes, it could have worked. But the way that it's being implemented is the biggest problem here.
Also, we look at silver. Again, it's sitting quite firmly in the mid 30s. I think it's around 33, nearly just short of $34 an ounce right now.
Yeah, right now it's actually 33.70 was the number I got this morning.
And again, it leads to what we spoke in not I think it was the last podcast where we spoke about the story of silver, where it was very erratic in its movement, and it's shown that stability that gold has traditionally shown, which for me gives a lot of confidence for big moves or continuous moves upward.
Definitely, one of the things about silver is that it's easier to manipulate than gold. And there are big players in the market who find it in their favor to keep the price of silver down. As we said, it's an industrial metal. It has a lot of actual industrial and practical applications, and keeping the price of silver down helps to bring down the price of those technologies, of those applications. I mean, we're talking solar power, we're talking the electric industry, we're talking the whole silver, what do we call it, the green economy, wind turbines, all of that. It's all heavily reliant on silver, and a lot of these big market players find it's in their interest to actually keep the price of silver down, to just manipulate that a little bit so that it doesn't go up to, as we spoke about, the gold silver ratio sitting at, I think it's 90 right now, just under 90. I think it's 89.9 or something like that, close enough to 90. But to bring it down to sort of a more normal ratio like 50, which is, I think, a bit more in line of where it should be, would damage a lot of the holdings of those big market players.
And that leads us to the main part of this podcast, and the discussion we wanted to have was on the gold silver ratio. Just to unpack it, the gold silver ratio generally is for 1 ounce of gold, how many ounces of silver would equal the same value in monetary value. Remember, an ounce is 31.2 grams to round it off. But typically, if you go and gauge the value, now for instance, in dollars, an ounce of silver, as you'd mentioned, is just short of $34 an ounce. And an ounce of gold, same weight, is $3,020 odd an ounce. So there's a massive difference in value of those two commodities. But as we discussed last week, there is this ratio that they've followed throughout, as long as they've been recording the use of silver and gold, especially as financial instruments, that they recorded the growth of silver versus gold in this ratio. And what's quite interesting is that ratio is extended, where it went to a maximum in 2020, which was just the break of COVID, in, I think it was March of 2020, where it went to a maximum of 126 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. And that was where that band had pulled completely to its widest in the cost value between gold and silver. Now it's narrowed down to around 90 to 1. But we know that still doesn't show the real value of silver or gold. And what we're really trying to get at here is which commodity between those two actually gives the best value and the most choice chance of actually growing higher over the next period of time. We know traditionally that the gold silver ratio narrows to between 30 and 40 to 1. And that's generally the sweet spot where silver then becomes more expensive in value to gold. So, your thoughts, Willem?
So yeah, I think we spoke about the 80-50 rule last time, where when it's above 80, you trade your gold for silver, and when it's below 50, you trade your silver for gold. And as I think we mentioned, there were 7 swaps that would have happened over the last 20 years or 40 years or something like that if you had done that. But your gold would have increased from 1 ounce to almost 5 ounces if you had done that. But yeah, let's quickly have a look at, the gold silver ratio. As you mentioned, it swings. Now let's go back quite a few years. Let's go back to Roman times. And the gold silver ratio was locked hard at 12 to 1 because it was actual coins being used as currency. 12 silver coins equaled 1 gold coin. So that was 12 to 1. And just a little bit of interesting history there. So, but let's look at a bit more recent times. Now, if we go back to 2011 was the lowest that it's been in recent times, and it was sitting at 35 then.
And that's in recent times. I mean, that's within the last 20 years that it's been in that ratio.
Yeah, that's 2011. It was 35, and as you mentioned, it hit the peak in 2020. I have the peak here as 105, but I mean, it
depends on which sources you're looking at. Yeah.
What exact day, over which period of time you're looking. So anyway, so basically what we've done is we had a look and we said, okay, so currently it's sitting at 89.9. And that means for $3,027 an ounce of gold, you've got silver valued at $33.70 for an ounce of gold. And what happens if it is more towards the favorable side? So let's take that gold silver ratio down to 50, which is where the swap happens.
Yes.
And if we were to do that and our ounce of gold stays at $3,027 an ounce, your silver price would rise to $60.54 an ounce. And that is the gold silver ratio of 50.
So, okay, so just to unpack this, what you're saying is if we had to bring the gold silver ratio into that 50 to 1, so 1 ounce of gold to 50 ounces of silver, the value of silver at that point would be around
$60.54
per ounce.
Per ounce.
And currently we're sitting on, just as I said, short of $34 an ounce. So it's literally a double jump in its current value.
And that shows you just how undervalued silver is and why people say, when it's above 80, buy. And that just gives you the perfect indication of how much value is still to be found in silver. If, as you know, there's been shortage, not shortages, what do you call it? Deficit, not.
Yeah, deficits.
Deficits, basically.
Supply deficits.
Yeah, supply deficits, that's it. Yeah, there's been supply deficits for
the last 4 years, without a doubt.
4 years.
Yeah.
And it's only growing because solar power is one of the biggest industries that uses silver, and that's growing in leaps and bounds. So silver really is undervalued. As I said before, it's in the interest of a lot of market players to keep that price as low as possible. And that's why we're seeing a ratio of 90 to 1 instead of 50 to 1.
And again, it is very high in ratio. It is exceptionally high. And it does lean to the fact that silver is undervalued. And, the big factors, and you've raised it, is the supply and demand, the deficit there's more demand than the supply can meet. And the big thing there is, as you mentioned, you highlighted solar panels, you highlight the EV explosion, you highlight a lot of technologies where silver is instrumental because it has the best conductivity with heat and electric conductivity. It's second to oil, is the most used commodity on earth. So it's from applications from medical all the way through to industrial to everything. So silver is a very unique metal with many different applications.
Definitely. I mean, there's so many things that they do with silver, so many things that you can't you don't even realize, and you go, that washing powder's got silver in it. You know,
You can drink silver,
you can drink silver, colloidal silver. Yeah,
and it's made from silver because I've also been in a position where we had a manufacturer for colloidal silver actually contact us, and they were requiring fine silver mini rods, which they use through an electrolysis process, would then actually create the silver into a liquid form, which dissolves slowly over a long period of time and over a large amount of water or liquid that they'd use. But it is physical silver that is being diluted into a liquid that people drink.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know the benefits of that or not. I'm not a doctor, so I won't comment on that. But yes, it is, it's mind-boggling how many things is actually done with silver, and the fact that its value is so low relative to gold. But on the other hand of the scale, let's look at the lowest the gold silver ratio has been in recent history. And as I mentioned, that was 2011. Now, just for
And
reference,
so 2011, it was at
it was at
35 to 1.
35 to 1. And
Yeah.
and I always like to use movies as a reference for time. And that was when Pirates of the Caribbean 4 just came onto the big screen. So that gives you sort of a feeling of how long ago that was. But 2011, it was 35 to 1. And if we had to apply that 35 to 1 to today's price of $3,027 an ounce of gold, make that gold silver ratio 35 to 1, you'd sit with silver that is sitting at $86.49
Sure.
an ounce. So it shows you, how valuable silver was in 2011. Just if we actually look at that difference in scale from where it is at 33 to $96.50 an ounce of silver. On the other hand of the scale, in 2020, when it hit its peak, we were looking at $28, $29 an ounce of silver compared to today's gold price.
And again, this is the important thing of this is both these metals run concurrently to each other in pricing. And we've always also spoken about this. There is data that shows during different periods of economic uncertainty that gold traditionally will grow first, and then silver follows it, and then outperforms it in percentage in its actual growth. And I mean, we've documented this for more than the last 50 years over the various decades. And silver always, in growth percentage, came out higher, far higher than gold. This is the first time in a very long time that gold has led the way and led it so strong for so long. And yet, silver, as we keep saying, is sitting there slowly holding its line. Now you want to use analogies. It's almost as like with Gladiator, and they're holding the line and they're waiting for that to break.
Yeah.
And again, that's the same kind of thing. That silver's there. It's showing the consistency. It's not being erratic in its movements. It's showing that that's gradual. And for me, that does speak towards the silver being a very good prospect from an investment perspective.
Definitely, and I think it's really being helped out by the move towards greener technology that we're seeing across the world. It's people are actually seeing the value, realizing that this is a metal to be utilized, an industrial metal. We're going to be using this for power generation. We're going to be using this for our vehicles. We're going to be using this for just about everything in our lives. And I think that's actually helping to stabilize the price at the moment.
Well, you mentioned AI, and what's interesting is I was listening to an interview with Elon Musk about these robots, our robot generated entities. And the thing is, remember when cell phones first came out, they were bricks and they were amazing. But if you look in the context of what we use today, it was chalk and cheese. I mean, I remember the first phones that came out with sat nav on them, and you'd sit trying to load it, and it would be buffering, buffering. Eventually, it just gave up on it. But conceptually, the ideas were there. The technology and the infrastructure needed to come up In other words, quicker data that we can send across the waves through cellular lines and so on. That improves suddenly then that access to it. We're all using it continually all the time. If it be it from a smart watch to a phone to your car, we're all tracking these things. They've been tracked through these different things, and it's all being monitored through AI. So I bring it back to these robots. And again, it seems so far-fetched, but realistically, they're saying that within the next 10 to 20 years, firstly, we will not be driving cars within the next 10 years. That they're saying up to 90% of vehicles driven in the next 10 years will be automatic. That you'll climb in it, you'll key in where you want to go, and it will take you there. There'll be a small amount that would still be utilized, but they're going to start to see that the human error, which does cause accidents, will become far more made aware that computers can, I think, and can also anticipate things as humans, where a lot of accidents are generally where we're losing concentration, where you're looking down or things like that. How many times do you drive in traffic and you see bumper bashings? And I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 times it's someone sitting on an iPhone or a Samsung, as you have, and going through, and suddenly they hit the car in front of them. And that's a fact. So the truth is, we got this whole AI revolution happening. We've seen the world changing. And again, this is leading towards those technologies that you're raising. And I know I've gone very long-winded there to come to my point, which is this. Is silver does have a massive application in the modern world we're moving into. And that for me is probably the most exciting thing. Is we look at the technologies that are being created now and we see the time that they are turning over and growing. I mean, they used to talk about a 3-year cycle period. It's now narrowed down to even less than a year, where it's literally doubling at such a rate that the size of the computing power of chips all the way through to everything. And this speaks to the world where we're going to be, as humans, in a very different position to what we know and understand. The idea of hard labor or manual labor will become a thing of the past. You'll almost, like we see people running a gym and working out, we will choose to do manual labor as a form of exercise. But that is becoming the reality of the world we're moving into.
It is actually, if you look at, as you said, what we had 20, let's go to the turn of the century, because it actually, I've been thinking about time recently. I've been thinking about the last 25 years, because this year marks the 25th year of the century. It's a quarter of a century in, and it's a nice time to sit back, take stock, and see what's happening. And yeah, if we look at the technology that was there 25 years ago versus what we have today, it's unfathomable to think what we would have had. These grand ideas of having a TV in your pocket.
That you would have thought that would be impossible.
It's commonplace. But as I'm saying, it got me thinking about time, and it got me thinking about the last 25 years. And so what I did was I thought to myself, you know what? We're always looking at, if you had $1 million or R1,000,000 and you invested R1 million in X, Y, and Z. Let's dial that back a little bit, Let's take it to something that is actually achievable for a lot of people. Something like 50,000.
Okay.
You've had a good year, you managed to save a bit, you got a nice bonus at work, you've got 50,000 Rand in the bank. And let's take it back to 2020, the year 2000. Let's take it back to 2000. So you've got 50,000 Rand, Not a negligible sum.
In 2020, that in 2000, that would have been a lot of
not money. A negligible sum, but it's not $1 million.
No.
It's far from $1 million. So it's year 2000, you've got 50,000 Rand. And you wake up on January 1st and you think,
well, firstly, there was no Y2K. So
yes,
airplanes didn't fall from the sky.
You actually did wake up on the 1st.
Exactly. So yeah.
It's good. You might have had a big hangover.
Well, it depends on how you woke up, but you would have woken up. Airplanes didn't fall from the skies. Computers didn't reset themselves. But yes.
So you're sitting there and you're thinking, I've got this 50,000 Rand. What am I going to do? So if we look at it, the Rand was $6, R6.14 to the dollar back then. And the gold price was $278 an ounce. So if we take that into consideration and you decide to buy gold, you would have bought 29 ounces of gold. And today you would be sitting with 1.6 million rands worth of gold from 50,000 rand in 25 years.
Okay, so let's just go back there. 50,000 would have bought me how much gold?
29.24 ounces. All right, that's spot price, so obviously a little bit
Okay,
less, but you get the idea.
This is an exercise. So we saying around 50,000 rand would have bought you 29 ounces of gold, roughly, give or take a few percentages here or there. Okay, so we know 29 ounces right now is based on how much in rands?
1.6 million.
So 50,000, 29 ounces hold over 25 years is now worth
1.6 million.
6 million. I'd love to see what other equities or that would give that form of a return.
I think obviously if you'd invested in the right stocks at the right time, sold at the right time, bought at the right time, then yes, you could have easily done that, maybe even more. But, you know, what's the chances of you getting everything right all the time? But yeah, so that would be 25 years, and that's a percentage increase of over 3,000%,
which is spot on. I mean, and again, you look at the general evaluations that we see the numbers on a daily basis, and we see these things, and you see gold has grown by 3,000% in rands, and that bears testament to that.
Yeah, and then I thought, well, what happened if you were, you know, like me, fresh out of school, didn't have money in you? But, you know, let's go 10 years later and take that same 50,000 rand. So now the rand is sitting to $7.54 US to the rand, and gold is sitting at $1,120 an ounce. So that means that 29 ounces you bought 10 years earlier has turned into 6.9 ounces now. So you're sitting on just under, 5.9. So you're sitting on just under 6 ounces of gold that you could have bought in 2010. Still nothing to sniff at. And that gold today would be worth 326,000 rand. So 50,000, 326. I mean, that's still an increase of 550%. That's still crazy, and that's just over the last 15 years.
And again, if you then also look at the other factor, which is a devaluating currency over that same period of time. Again, I mean, the rand dollar, and I'll get the rand from 2000, or do you have it?
Yeah, it was 6.14 in 2000. And
the 6 rand?
6 rand 14 cents in 2000, and it was 7.54 in 2010, which is... Okay, I took the prices on January, which was actually a very good time for the rand in 2010. So it might be a little bit skewed. I think it went up quite a bit after that. But over those 10 years, it actually didn't do too bad up until there.
Sure. And again, this is the amazing thing. And the lovely thing also here, and we talk about this all the time, is gold as a commodity, as a vehicle of wealth maintenance, proves itself time and time again. During just the last 25 years, like you said, we're into the first quarter of this century. I mean, that's a mind-blowing thought to even consider, that it's just gone like that. And then secondly, you look at that period of time, and as you say, it's not about if you can go and purchase a big amount, but it's that growth that gives a return that is so important, especially on these longer periods. And again, we always go back to it, that buying physical bullion is not about buying today, selling tomorrow. It's about buying and holding, not for now, but not for tomorrow, but the next day. So holding it over the longer period is where you start to see the massive value of it.
Definitely. I mean, we can continue this trend. 2020,
yes.
You know, $50,000, 14 rands to the dollar. It was actually a lovely number for January 1st. It was, for all intents and purposes, 14 rand exactly to the dollar. Anyway, So that would have bought you 2.25 ounces of gold, which today is 124,000 Rand. And then that was an increase of almost 150%, and that's over 5 years. Now we come to 2025, and we're sitting with 18 Rand 87 to the dollar in January. That 50,000 Rand would have bought you 1 ounce of gold, which today is worth 55,000. Now we're talking spot, as I said before, because this is just an exercise. Obviously, you're not going to buy it for that. No average person is going to buy gold for spot. It's as simple as that. There's manufacturing, there's dealer fees, there's all of those things involved, and I think we've covered this already. So yeah, we're just talking spot, and that's an 11% increase just in
Over the last
3 months.
Yeah,
In
over the
3
last 3
months.
months. Okay,
From
yes.
January 1st to today,
Yeah.
it's 11% increase.
So I just want to unpack the ounces produced by the same number of 50,000 for this exercise. So in 2000, I would have got 29 ounces, right?
29.25.
Okay, then 2010, 2010.
Close enough to 6 to call it 6.
So from 29 ounces, it dropped to 6 ounces in value
10
over the
years.
same amount of money.
10
So
years.
that shows you the growth of gold. It shows you the depreciation in the currency. And then we go to 2020
Yeah.
was the next period. And how many ounces?
2.25.
So from 6 to 2.25 ounces. And then to now,
1.
1. That is insane. In the period of 25 years, it's gone from a value of 29 ounces to 1 ounce for the same amount of money. If that doesn't speak to gold's relevance in the world we're living in right now, in maintaining wealth, then I don't know what else would actually even convince anybody else on this.
Definitely. And I mean, as we say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You know, it's about maintaining wealth. It's about growing wealth over the long term. There we go, building generational wealth. We've got it right there. And that's the thing. It's about building generational wealth. It's about preserving your wealth over the long term, and it's about preserving or protecting your wealth against things like currency depreciation, against things like inflation and the like. And that is why we love gold.
Again, I mean, and again, thanks for all that research, Willem. For me, it's so important, and it highlights what we talk about all the time. And you know, the lovely thing with this is we are using different case studies to highlight the same thing each time, and that gold has a relevance in this world, and especially physical gold. A paper-backed derivative to me is literally the piece of paper it is. And again, that's become quite a big problem with the COMEX and with the LBMA, the London Bullion Market Association, where of course they allocate a lot of their holdings into derivatives, into ETFs, and now suddenly there's a big demand on the physical. And they start to say, well, actually, we don't have the volumes of gold that supports the amount of paper gold out there.
Yeah, and that might actually also be why silver is showing a lot stronger these days. Is, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so when I'm talking about the market players manipulating silver, it happens.
No, it's a given fact because
that's the way they do it.
It's about money.
Definitely, and the way they do it is by flooding the market with paper silver. And now all of a sudden, there's actually a physical demand for physical silver. And suddenly, it's a lot harder to do that. It's a lot harder to flood it with paper. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why silver is actually so much more stable these days.
It definitely lends towards your argument. Again, we have, and we've highlighted it in today's podcast, that there's definitely that stability that silver has shown over the last 3 years. That growth has been consistent. There's been very few big spikes and big dips that we've previously seen, which was typical of silver, and it definitely lends itself towards that. The other thing is we see gold, and again, we've broken that $3,000 mark or the resistant line, and we don't see it coming underneath it. I do foresee that there may be a pullback, but again, it would be, in my mind, a time to buy and a time to actually reevaluate the gold you have and definitely look to purchase more.
Definitely. I mean, we've been looking at a lot of the financial models, the Kindleberger-Minsky model that we spoke about last time out, and there's always that pullback. It's because people see the all-time high, there's profit taking, people are selling, and obviously that drives the price down. It's supply and demand, as we always saying, and when the supply outstrips the demand, it's going to go down. But we do see time and time again, every single time, constantly, when people are looking for a safe haven, they buy gold. And we're not talking about, the guy who has 50,000 Rand in his bank account. We're talking about billions and billions, and we're talking millions of ounces being traded. And that's the kind of people that are seeing the value in actually putting that wealth into gold. So, you know what? If you don't agree with a guy who's got 50 billion or 100 billion in his bank account, I don't know. I think he might know a little bit more about money than you do.
That said, I also, and I've said this before, is pay attention to what institutional investors are doing, and also your central banks. What are they doing?
It's definitely, I mean, it's one of the phases of the Kindleberger-Minsky model. It's that awareness phase, institutional investors and central banks. Look at what they're doing, because that's going to be the next big thing.
Willem, in closing, and I thank you again for all the research you've done for today's podcast. I think it's been fantastic. It's also been a good way to actually break down just over the last 25 years how currencies have devaluated so much, but over that same period of time, how much gold has grown. And again, it also comes down to this thing we call inflation. That what 50,000 would have bought you then, what it buys you now, from 29 ounces in 2000 to 1 ounce in 2025.
It's actually scary what money would have bought back then. I mean, you could have bought a BMW 3 Series for 177,000 Rand.
That said, I thank you for your time again, and we definitely will see you guys soon. Willem, just to let everyone know the basics of what we need to do if they want to continue to watch us.
If you enjoyed the content, found it useful, hit the like button, and if you want to see some more, be sure to subscribe.
Thank you and take care. Bye.